Okay, hi everyone. Sorry to stop the songs because I know everyone was jamming, but we want to go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone to our general body meeting close to Halloween, so we had to play some tunes. Make sure for our SWE members, to click on the link. I put it in the chat, just to track your attendance. We're keeping track of who's coming and giving points to everyone so that you can get some really cool prizes. So, get on with the presentation. Announcements. So, like we've been doing for the past couple of weeks, um, we are recognizing awesome members who have been really involved in SWE and making a big difference. So we always have two every GBM, and this week's no different. So our first sweetie of the week is a third-year industrial engineering major from Georgia, and she's been really engaged in meetings and events, asking great questions to our company representatives who come and speak, and she also volunteered at Tea with the Dean. So, drum roll, it's Cosmia. So thank you so much for being such an engaged general body member. We really appreciate all your involvement, and we love seeing all the awesome questions you've been asking.
Thank you, guys. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, next up is someone who is a fourth-year aerospace engineering major. She's really been involved in meetings and events. She's our awards and recognition chair. Probably know who she is by now, but she also did our virtual tea with the dean, which is a lot of work, and she's done a great job. So, drum roll, it is Jackie. Thank you, Jackie, for all your hard work. You've done such an amazing job, and we're really excited for all the things you're doing this year. Cool. I think most of you probably have already heard this spiel a bunch of times, but if you want to get more involved in SWE, GT SWE, and the national SWE organization we're part of, you can pay for membership. Then that allows you to run for chair exec positions, go to conferences, stuff like that. If you're interested, you can always check out our website. And then, like I mentioned, you get points for coming to SWE events, and there is a really awesome incentive system that Sealy, our VP of membership, has been working on. So make sure you come out to our events. We have a bunch of different opportunities, and you can track your points on our website. So here's just the tiers that you can get, but we have some really awesome SWE t-shirts that just came in with a really cute design for this year. So definitely try to aim for those points. We have a lot of cool prizes. And if you bring a guy to our events, we really care about he for SWE, so having allies who are not just females, but also males. So definitely bring out your guy friends too. And as I mentioned, if you want to track your SWE points, there is a member resources tab on our website, and that's where you can find the points as well as other resources like GBM recordings. So this is only open to our members, and that's why we're giving password only at general body meetings. So just fill in the password when you access that website. We have a Facebook community page, not used super often, but if you're interested, you can join. And then most importantly, if you guys aren't already on it, our SWE Slack is the main way we communicate, as well as our SWE Instagram. Our social media chair has been doing an amazing job with all our flyers for upcoming events, so it's a good way to stay tuned to all that we're doing. And then for Slack review, make sure you have your notifications on for all messages so that you don't miss anything that we're posting about. And of course, our newsletter sent out weekly has everything in one place, so you don't have to necessarily use social media if you're not into that stuff, but definitely sign up there if you haven't already. And then lastly, we have our Google Calendar, so if you want to see how things overlap with your own schedule, you can add our SWE calendar to yours.
Hi everyone, this is a opportunity that we're trying to just gauge interest right now, but basically it would be kind of like a pen pal over winter break, and we're hoping to have either pairs of people or groups. So, and some of the tasks that you would be completing are just meeting with each other, hanging out. The more you complete, the more fun prizes your group wins. So definitely fill out the tiny URL if you think that you'd be interested in doing that over winter break.
One more thing, Seely, thanks for presenting that, but
Yeah,
just
go
if you
for
guys
it.
have any other ideas, as part of this Google form, there's an option for you to just input just some opinions, any thoughts on this particular activity, but other things that you would want maybe incorporated into it as well. So be sure to fill it out for us. I'll put the link in the chat as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Sophia. And next, we will be still having our holiday dinner this semester virtually. So the link is there, and I'll also put it in the chat afterwards. It'll be December 19th, which is after finals, and we'll give you guys like a little care package with some fun crafts, activities, and snacks. So definitely sign up if you are interested in participating. And finally, we want to make sure that we recognize all of our graduating seniors. So if you're graduating this year, please fill out that form. That includes the fall, spring, and summer, but definitely fill out the form if you're graduating this semester by November 10th, please, so that we can make sure that we recognize you.
Hello, everybody. Thank all of you who came to the fall networking night last week. It was a hit, and I know there are some kinks to work out, which is why I've created a feedback form for our virtual fall networking night. So if you attended fall networking night or if you were interested in it, please go ahead and fill that out and let us know if we can do anything to make the spring networking night even better, because it looks like that's going to be online as well. All right, and I'm pretty excited about this. This is a Convoy software event happening November 4th from 5 to 6 p.m. Go ahead and sign up there, and I also put the Blue Jeans link just in case. But Convoy is a software company looking for serious hires and interns for next summer and the fall after that. They told me that they are actually skipping the interview process for anyone interested, the application process for anyone interested in applying to one of these internships if you attend this event. So you'll just go straight to the interview phase. You won't need to fill out their formal application. So if you're interested, go ahead and fill out the form, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, so for outreach, it's kind of the same on this part. Just fill out a background check if you want to help us out for any events that we have that are directly in, like, working with minors, sorry. So that's going to be our high school outreach event, which is coming up on November 15th. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Hannah. So I know a lot of you have applied for background checks, and it's still kind of in progress, but right here, you'll see the email that you get, and this is a kind of survey thing they do that HR runs through Georgia Tech, and that's your background check survey. If you don't fill this out, you will not get background checked. So if you think you received this and you didn't fill it out because it looked kind of sketchy, that's totally fine, but you need to email me so I can get it resent to you, or else you won't be background checked and you won't be able to help out with any of our events. There's one more, Hannah. Okay, and then also, kind of off the topic of background checks, this is a volunteer event we have that you don't need to be background checked for. We are doing an elementary school outreach video series. We need people to help edit the videos, translate the videos into different languages, and then also film short clips of them explaining the science behind the videos. So you do not have to be background checked. This will be going on throughout the month of November. We're going to have a new video every Saturday, so there's plenty of opportunities to get involved and help out. You can see the sign up here, and there's also a QR code if you want to scan to that and go sign up.
Well, and as always, current opportunities, we have a million of them, and there's just always companies and organizations on campus that reach out to us to give us info sessions or other hackathons, things like that, for us to participate in if we're interested. So make sure you check out these links. They're in the newsletter, but just an example would be like if you look here at Campus Opportunities, they have notes that you can look at with links. So as an example, Research Ambassadors. Also our Professional Opportunities probably has the most that come in every single day. And our Historian Chair has been doing an amazing job putting it all together. So definitely check those out. They're on the newsletter. So yep, don't want you to miss out on anything really valuable. And this week, our GBM company is Marathon, so I'm going to turn it over to them to share their presentation.
All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're very excited at this opportunity to get to meet all of you and tell you about our experience at Marathon as female engineers. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to just type them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So for our presentation, we wanted to take a moment to introduce our three speakers, myself, Allison, and Chelsea, and then we'll give you an overview of Marathon as a company. And then we wanted to take a moment to discuss our experience as female engineers and give you some insights and pointers into our experience in the workplace. And then we'll wrap up our presentation with a project example so you can get a feel for the role and responsibility of engineers at Marathon.
Hi everybody, I'm Allison. I'm gonna start by introducing myself first, and I want to apologize at the start for my voice. I had to work an event at my children's school this weekend, and we had to wear a mask the whole time, and it was 3 or 4 hours, so I seem to have lost my voice in the process of doing that. So Chelsea and Grace are going to present a lot of what's here, but so I'm an engineering supervisor at Marathon. My background is actually electrical engineering, so I graduated from LSU in 2003. Before I worked for Marathon, I actually worked overseas in Scotland for 3 years for an engineering firm. So I have a little bit of experience before coming to Marathon. Prior to that, I did intern for a power company, Entergy, while I was in college as well. So unlike Chelsea and Grace, I had other experiences before working for Marathon, but I've been at the Garyville refinery for the past 14 years. I'm from New Orleans, and the refinery so I know y'all aren't familiar with the area, so the Garyville refinery is actually about halfway between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So you'll get some people that live in New Orleans and some folks that live on the other side, Baton Rouge, and some surrounding areas. Like I said, my current role is engineering supervisor. I'm actually the mechanical engineering supervisor. And prior to that, I was E&I supervisor. I did about 6 years of project management. So in our major projects group, managing some larger projects. And prior to that, I was the area team support role. E&I engineer prior to that for about 5 or 6 years. I am married and I've got 3 really young children, 6, 4, and 2.
Hello everybody, my name is Chelsea Pusey. I'm an E&I turnaround projects engineer. I graduated from University of Toledo in 2015. So I've been with Marathon for about 5 years now, also solely located in Garyville. Prior to that, I did 4 internships with Marathon through college. It was built in my curriculum. Came to Louisiana for one of those opportunities, and then I've been to our Ohio and Michigan refineries as well. I'm from Tiffin, Ohio. And my prior role was the E&I area team engineer. All my projects are about the same size in this new role as well, just focusing on turnaround. And I'm recently married.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Grace Hebert. I'm a mechanical engineer and I just graduated from Louisiana State University in May. So like all of you, I got to participate in the fun experience of virtual school. I've been with the company full-time since mid-July, and I've been working in the role of area team engineer for our tank farm. Before that, I had 2 internships with Marathon in similar roles at our Garyville and Detroit refinery. And I also had an internship with Cameron Schlumberger, which is an oil and gas servicing company in their upstream division. So I was learning a lot about the design of wellheads. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm very excited to have just moved back there.
So next we're going to dive into a little bit more about who Marathon Petroleum Company is. Marathon has been in business for more than 130 years. We are the largest refiner in the United States. We have geographically and strategically aligned operations, and we are the industry leader in emphasizing safety and environmental responsibility. On an operating income per barrel basis, we are consistently a top performer, and we are characterized by safe and reliable operation. Marathon consists of the downstream oil and gas production. Upstream functions are done by a separate company. Upstream functions consist of identification and extraction of raw materials, so fracking and extracting crude oil from the earth, while the downstream portion is the production and distribution of refined materials, so that's what we do. Marathon's downstream system consists of 3 sectors. The refining sector consists of 16 refineries in 13 different states across the U.S. The retail sector consists of our branded gas stations, and then the blue lines that you see on the map are our midstream sector, which is the transportation and storage of crude oil and refined products. So we use pipelines, terminals, and barges to transport that product. Marathon's total rated crude oil refining capacity is 3,067,000 barrels per calendar day. The 10 refineries below make up our mid-continent system, producing 1,193,000 barrels. In August of this year, we did announce the indefinite idle of our Gallup refinery, and work is underway to complete this transition by the end of the year. Galveston Bay Refinery and Garyville Refinery make up our Gulf Coast system, producing 1,163,000 barrels per calendar day. As you can see, these are our 2 largest refineries in our system. GBR is 2nd largest in the country, and then Garyville swaps between 3rd and 4th largest in the company. And then lastly, these 4 refineries make up our West Coast system, producing 711,000 barrels per calendar day. In August of this year, we announced that our Martinez refinery will be idled indefinitely and converted to a terminal storage operation. We also announced that we are evaluating potential construction of a 48,000 barrels per day renewable diesel facility at that site. And there's no final project decisions yet on that, but that's where we're at with that.
We also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our sustainability practices. Marathon is very proud to have received the Energy Star Award for the 3rd year in a row. A company has to meet very strict standards in regards to energy efficiency and performance in order to be eligible for this award, with the goal being to protect the environment through the adoption of energy efficient practices. And Marathon is actually a leader in the industry and earns about 66% of US EPA awards. In March, we also announced a company-wide goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions intensity by 30% of our 2014 levels by the year 2030, and we've tied that to our employee compensation. Marathon has also been very active in responding to the current pandemic. We have donated N95 respirators to healthcare facilities and have also donated $1 million to the American Red Cross. We also have a growing renewable energy portfolio, as Chelsea mentioned. We have a biodiesel facility in Cincinnati, Ohio. We have a joint venture ownership of 4 Midwest ethanol plants. And we are also converting 2 of our petroleum refineries, Dickinson and Martinez, to produce renewable fuels. Marathon also owns Virent, a research and development company that is researching how to turn sugars into fuel for renewable gasoline. And we wanted to provide you all with a very high-level overview of the refining process. Refining, as Chelsea mentioned, is a downstream process in the oil and gas industry in which you're taking in crude oil and turning it into the various products such as fuel for transportation and heating, asphalt for paving roads, and chemical feedstocks for the production of plastics. And refineries are made up of various process units, and each one is going to be a little different based on what products they can take in and which products they can make. But all refineries are going to include storage tanks, a wastewater and treatment plant, product blending, and different means of transportation that include pipeline, ships, barges, rail cars, and trucks. And basically, a refinery will take in crude, heat it up, and then put it into a distillation column. And within this distillation column, the crude is going to separate into different components or fractions based on its boiling point. So at the top of the column on the left of this photo, you can see the lighter ends of crude, like liquid petroleum gas. And at the bottom, you would see the heavier components of crude that would boil at the highest temperature, like our residuals or heavy gas oil. And through various process units, which you can see sort of in the middle of this diagram, we would convert that into the products that you see on the right side.
So the next part of our presentation, we thought it would be good for y'all to kind of hear our three experiences being a female engineer in a male-dominated industry like in oil and gas or just engineering in general. I'm going to talk through a couple of challenges and tips. I think some of them are pretty obvious, but I'll throw in some of my personal examples and situations throughout, and Chelsea and Grace will do that as well. And then we'll allow y'all to maybe ask questions or share your experiences or perspectives afterwards. But I'd start out by saying, you know, my experience being a female and engineer has been extremely positive. I'll share a couple of examples of some situations that have happened, but in general, those are few and far between. So just touching on, I mean, some of the more obvious, some of these are obvious, but, you know, some challenges that you can be faced with as, you know, a female engineer. You know, the first one being gender stereotypes. So obviously you're kind of breaking that mold when you decide to pursue a career in engineering. You know, the percentages are low, but they are increasing for women in the field. But some general stereotypes that, you know, people kind of have in their heads unconsciously sometimes. Women are more nurturing and accommodating. Assertive women could be considered bossy. Women are less career oriented, or women with children are less devoted to their jobs. I mean, on the flip side, I would also say that men can be, I find, you know, the males are becoming more interested in caring for their children and, you know, taking time off for their children. And that can also be perceived as negatively, or that, you know, maybe they're poor breadwinners or something like that. So they face that challenge as well. And I think in the field of engineering, I think people are almost always surprised when I tell them I'm an engineer. I mean, people outside of work, and they hear that I'm an engineer, it's surprising. So I think, you know, there's that stereotype that, you know, engineering is only for men. But in terms of being in the workplace, I mean, for me, it is few and far between that I felt like I've been stereotyped to do something, but occasionally you'll get in a situation where maybe, you know, someone expects you to take the notes or do the administrative tasks because you're a female. So, I mean, I'll talk about, you know, a situation like that and how I've, you know, kind of counteracted it a little bit. But those are just kind of some general, I think, gender stereotypes that, you know, you can be faced with. The next one I put on here was unconscious bias and being treated differently. So, you know, I'll share one story. So in the first year of my career at Marathon, I kind of got thrown in the deep end. A guy left the company and I was handed one of his projects, which was a huge challenge, but also I was totally up for it. And I went into one of the first meetings associated with that project, and it was about 20 men. And, I was the only female. And one of the guys, there was a vendor in there who was going to actually help with the project and do a portion of the programming that was associated with the project. And he was asked by someone in the room, how difficult are these programming changes to make? And his immediate response was, well, it's not something that women and children can do. And it was so quick and so just it almost just seemed natural for him to say. And he was an older guy. And thankfully, I'm really young in my career. That's the first time I've ever been faced with something like that. But thankfully, a couple of guys in the room kind of stood up and immediately said, hey, you've got Allison in the room. You can't say that in front of her. Of course, I was, not sure what to do being such a young engineer. And it's kind of intimidating when you're in a room with 20 men. And, we talked about it afterwards, me and this guy, and we're still friends to this day. He apologized. He, didn't mean it maliciously. And I don't think that most people ever do when things like that happen. And I knew that he didn't, so I didn't give him too hard of a time. But it just goes to show that I think there are unconscious biases that people have. And I think it's changing as generations kind of move through, and it becomes more normal for females to go into STEM type jobs. But in his generation, it wasn't. And that was kind of his initial reaction. So that's just kind of one of my examples there, probably one of the worst ones that I can give. So that says a lot. I haven't really had a situation like that since. But some other unconscious biases that I think, you might be faced with at some point is that most people associate men with career and then women with family. So, like I said, I've been fortunate enough to have been given some really challenging roles and challenging projects. So I don't ever feel like I've been passed up because I'm a working mom, but that's not to say, that kind of situation doesn't exist. There are sometimes there's challenges when my kids are sick, or I need to work from home to take care of a child. In general, I think most of my bosses have understood, but there's definitely situations where that can be more challenging. On the flip side, I think, my husband and I really share the load. So, if he has to go ask his boss to stay home, I think it's almost sometimes more difficult for a male to ask because of that unconscious bias. So, I've talked with my male coworkers and of course my husband about that. And I think they find that more challenging to have to ask for time off time to stay home with children. It is nice though now that, Marathon has given paternity leave started maybe, I think it was last year, which is really nice to see that happening and to see men using it. And that helps, females because it helps, them to be able to balance it out with their spouses. And I'm finding that balance of, kind of both parents taking on that responsibility for family is becoming more common. So maybe that, that unconscious bias of, women being associated with family, men being associated with career will, eventually dissolve to an extent. I think it's possible that sometimes women get spoken over in meetings, and there's an unconscious expectation that only men should be assertive. It can already be intimidating to be in a meeting with, a room full of men, and then to assert yourself as well can be somewhat intimidating and challenging. The next one I put on here was working harder to earn respect. So I have to admit, this is one that I've never felt like I've had to work harder, but I think I'll say externally, I think women sometimes, for one-off people, I don't think in general, but there might be certain people out there that you might have to try a little bit harder whether it's a generational thing, they just don't, they didn't grow up with their moms and their wives working, so they don't understand, they can't empathize with that. So you might just have to work a little bit harder, with certain people. But I will say on the same note, those internally, so I think that women do a worse job than men when it comes to, like asking for promotions or thinking that it's worth it for you to be given something more, or that you've just done better than somebody else. So I think we tend to downplay how well of a job we've done just for whatever reason. I think of a TED Talk that I heard Sheryl Sandberg give one time, and her example was her and her girlfriend and her brother went and took this test in college, and they all got out of the test. And the two girls, Cheryl and her friend, said, "Oh, I did so awful on that. I know I probably got a C or whatever it was." It completely downplayed how well he did. And her brother was like, "Oh, I killed it. It's, it was, I did perfect. I got everyone right." And then it ended up being the opposite. And I do find that, some of my male friends have talked about asking for a promotion or going in to their boss and saying, "I think I deserve this." And I just find that men are a little more apt to do that. So it's something to definitely be aware of, and something I work on, and I'm learning to recognize and to maybe, go for it when I normally wouldn't have. It's kind of out of my comfort zone. The next one I put on here was just being different. So, obviously I've already given some examples where, you're in a room full of people and you're the only female, and that can be intimidating. And you do have a different perspective as a female. And that can be intimidating, not to have, people that can understand where you're coming from, and you kind of have to just step out of your comfort zone and be willing to speak for what you think, whether it's something completely outside of the box that maybe no one in the room has brought up, or, just having the confidence to recognize that you are different, but that you bring a very positive perspective to the table. I think that can be challenging. I have found that challenging, and I've found that I had to really push myself to just go for it sometimes, when I know it might be something totally out of left field that nobody else in the room has thought of. At the end of the day, it's always worked out for me. So, I think just you grow that comfort level, and you grow that confidence to go ahead and just, say something if you think it should be done. And then just in general, just with engineering, so here at Marathon, we've got about 150 engineers that work at this refinery alone, and about 30 of them are female. So it's about 20% rate of females here. And then in the department that Chelsea, Grace, and I work in, it's a little less. It's about 15%. So, and then, the women that are in leadership roles like supervision and management is also really minimal. So I think, not having as many role models available, to kind of pave the way and, give an example of, how they've been successful. I think that makes it more challenging. You kind of have to navigate that and figure some of that out on your own. So I think just some kind of general tips. I'll start here with just challenging gender stereotypes. So, I think just like I said before, being in engineering alone and deciding to make that your career path is, challenging that stereotype. And I think with new generations, work coming up into the workplace, and, I didn't have a lot of exposure or proactive exposure to STEM when I was a child. I just kind of fell into it. It wasn't encouraged upon me to go do it, which I think is starting to be more common now. I'll give an example of where someone asked me to do something that, is traditionally female. You can push back on them. So, about a month ago, someone asked me if I would go update this document for them, which is something they were completely capable of doing themselves. It wasn't the first time that this guy had asked me to go do something which I would consider a little bit administrative, giving me a task like that. And I kind of just said, okay, here's where you can go. Here's where you can find it. You can go ahead and update it. This is how you do it. So, pointing them in the right direction. I don't think anybody means any harm, but, definitely, don't, you can kind of push back and kind of lead a horse to water type of thing if that type of stuff keeps happening.
So I'm going to jump in here on the next one. This is Chelsea speaking. So get comfortable with standing out. So at the beginning of my career, I'd been there for about 9 months, and an opportunity came about to coordinate instrumentation for a very large turnaround. This was only a small portion of the work happening during the turnaround, but I've never worked a turnaround at that point, so the opportunity was nerve-wracking, but I went ahead and I took the chance, and they assigned me to be the coordinator. So when I started the turnaround, I realized I was not only coordinating multiple hourly men that had a lot more experience than me, I was the only girl around that entire zone shop. So I had to jump and quickly get comfortable with the fact that I did stand out in the room, because not only was I young with little experience, I was a kind and quiet female, and these men were looking to me for a daily plan to tackle the instrumentation that we were responsible for changing out and installing during this turnaround. So looking back on it, that was one of the best opportunities I've had in my career thus far, because I gained so many allies throughout the entire plant. So these men were patient with me at the time, and they continue to be. They continue to enjoy teaching me more and more about what's in the field and the challenges that I would face with different instrumentation applications. And I could call them anytime that I need some help with something.
Yeah, so, and then the next one, I would say, just recognizing that, because there are very few female engineers, it can make I would say probably more like the older generation of males a little bit uncomfortable, because they didn't grow up with, they didn't grow up that way. There's a lot more female engineers now than there were, 15, 20 years ago when they were younger. And so I think it's helped me just to know that if they've said or done anything like the story that I gave, you would know if it was done intentionally or maliciously to offend you. And 9 times out of 10, it's not. 9 times out of 10, it's just, or most of the time, it's just that, they feel uncomfortable, and they're also trying to figure out, what it's like to have, females in our type of male-dominated industry. I think a big one for me is, networking. So, Garyville's done a great job. Marathon's done a great job of having, they call employee network. So we have one that's focused on women, but I was really happy to see that, our first meeting, a bunch of men showed up, and I think it's great to have, those females that you can talk to and get advice from, but it's also really good to get support from, male counterparts. I've got some really close male friends here that I feel really comfortable having that male-female discussion. What's your perspective on this? They have talked about, being a male parent and wanting to do more with their kids. They don't want to be like, their dads that were, only worked and they were never home. And so kind of navigating those waters and figuring out that work-life balance with them. But also, having those females that you can also lean on to talk to. So I think networking is a huge one. And then, the next one, just embracing, who you are and having, that confidence and just knowing that you do have different skills and perspectives that you bring to the table. Like I said before, you can't be afraid to give it. It can be scary. It can be scary to throw out an idea that, you know, someone else, you know, the table probably had their minds weren't even going there, but, you know, you can challenge, you know, older generations to think outside of the box. You know, I read one quote that said companies with more women in leadership have more generous employee policies and produce better business results. So I think, you know, that's all the more reason to get more females, you know, in the workplace and in those leadership roles. I think it I found it really helps to promote, you know, work-life balance and offer, you know, that different perspective.
And just to touch on the being confident and not underestimating your ability. So throughout my career, there's many times I've felt intimidated, like Allison mentioned, you know, walking into a new meeting or into a meeting where it's predominantly male, it can be very intimidating. And it's the same with the construction crew and the zone shop. So we work with those different people quite a bit in this role. So that took a little bit for me to get over, like getting confident and walking in that room and taking on whatever challenge lies ahead. So, but being confident in your work is very important asset to your success as a young female engineer. Showing confidence helps build other people's confidence in you, and your confidence helps you stand out in a more positive way, leaving people to focus on the qualities that you bring to the table rather than the fact that you're a female. So I've seen myself grow more confident, and my relationships with different leaders throughout the refinery have become greater. So again, just being confident and not underestimating your ability.
Does anybody have any like specific questions for us or want to share their perspective? I guess I'll open the floor. I know Chelsea and Grace are going to also kind of give y'all an example of a project that they worked on too, just to give y'all an idea of what females do, what we've done project wise. But okay, well, if y'all think of anything and you want to throw it up in the chat, please feel free. We can talk about it after the presentation's over.
All right, so projects at our refinery are done for a few different reasons. It can be a profit improvement idea, so something to execute in the field that could make us run a little more efficiently and make some more money. It can be done for a safety reason, to bring something up to code, or it could be, you know, a direct solution for an issue that's being encountered. And projects can either go to the mechanical or electrical engineer, but oftentimes you're working on something that has both a mechanical and electrical scope. And your main goal here is to basically see the project through from the definition of the problem to its construction in the field. So you start by sort of hosting a meeting with all of the necessary people to develop the scope. So defining the problem and then defining the solution. And that includes walking it down in the field with our operations department. And then you are also in charge of leading the management of change process. So if your project is changing anything in the refinery, a big safety driver for us is to document that change thoroughly and put it through our management of change process. You're also responsible for hosting the hazard evaluation meeting, which is a requirement for a management of change, and then figuring out the cost estimate for your project as well as the schedule. And then all of that is slapped together into a decision support package, which is then presented to our managers for approval and to be placed into our budget.
So the example that we're giving, a project request form was written to evaluate the interstage drum control valve sizing in our SATS gas unit because the existing control valve cannot adequately drain the interstage drum level in the event of liquid level overfill. So recommendations were created to increase the size of this control valve to avoid future overfill incidents. So again, I'm an electrical and instrumentation engineer. I learned a lot about instrumentation through my internships, but I didn't have any instrumentation experiences through college. So it's been a learning curve at the beginning of my career. But so as an instrument engineer on a project like this, we would work with technical services to gather process conditions to appropriately size this new control valve. Process conditions being the required flow rate at maximum rates, normal rates, as well as temperatures and pressures, etc. We would then work with our control valve vendor to help us determine the appropriate control valve for these updated conditions. We would retrieve a quote. We would have continuous communications with maintenance, operations, tech service, and our mechanical engineer counterpart to ensure all components of the valve are sized appropriately and we meet all of the correct metallurgies for this process. We then do a constructability review and estimate the man hours to disconnect and reconnect all of the different components on this existing control valve to our new valve. If the control valve configuration or footprint changes drastically, then we have a more detailed estimate, but in this case it did not, thankfully. And after the project is budgeted for approval, we would work with our drafters to assemble a construction work package. We support the drafters with technical information and drawing reviews throughout that entire process. And then your construction work package hits the field, and through the completion of a project in the field, we provide field support and review the final installation prior to starting up the new equipment.
And as far as the mechanical engineer's responsibilities for this project, they would work with the field construction crew to review the package before its construction. So basically ensuring that all of the piping components and fittings are rated for the pressure, the temperature, and the service that they'll be exposed to. And then they would support the field construction crew through its completion and review it before the system is started up. And as a mechanical engineer, you would also look for various things if you're touching a line that you can improve in a project. So you want to make sure that this configuration is ergonomic and safe for all the operators to go up to in the field and use. You look for small things that you can fix. So for example, if a horizontal line has a gate valve on it that is facing upwards, that could cause it to fail closed. So you would, if you were touching that line, rotate it sideways so that that valve can't fail closed and block off flow into your line. So you're always just looking for small improvements. But as a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, your shared discipline projects are usually weighted in complexity more heavily towards either the mechanical or electrical side. So I just wanted to make a note that if you're a mechanical engineer at a refinery, you will have more complex and challenging projects to look forward to. This example is more something we wanted to present to include both the mechanical and electrical side, but as you can see, the mechanical engineer's scope of work is a little thinner than the electrical's. And at this time, if you guys have any questions, you can open up the chat and look through if anything has posted anything, or if you want to go ahead and just ask.
It looks like there's a couple questions. I'll start with the first one, and then I guess Chelsea and Grace just chime in. If someone cuts you off in a meeting or makes an inappropriate comment and no one else speaks up, is it appropriate for you to speak up for yourself, or is that something that you should discuss offline after the meeting? I guess I would say what you can handle it both ways. I think, when someone has cut me off in a meeting, I think it's obvious to everybody else that that person had been rude or, whatever. And quite often I've found that people will speak up, but if they don't, and you feel comfortable, saying something in the meeting, I think that's fine. I've had to do that before. But also, if you want to develop a good relationship with that person and make sure that it doesn't happen again, I think it's also appropriate to, have a conversation with that person one-on-one too, and just, tell them your perspective and that, you felt like you were being cut off, and you might actually find that they didn't mean to offend you or do it that, they didn't mean to do that, and maybe that's just their style. But I think either way would be appropriate. Sure. So then what are some ways that younger female engineers can portray themselves confidently, even if they aren't always sure of themselves? So, that's the biggest part of it almost sometimes is you might not be confident, but, staying calm, taking a deep breath, maintaining your composure can really help. I think it helps guide you also to stay calm just in general if you can do that. But you might be have these butterflies and be so nervous on the inside, but then, no one in the room will have a clue that that's happening, right? If you can maintain your composure. And I think what you're getting at is, that can be almost the biggest part of it. Chelsea and Grace, I don't know if y'all have any more suggestions on how to do that. But I think we've all been there, and we've all known that it's important that we try to stay calm, and I think you can get good at it over time as well. I don't know, that's just my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, I agree, Allison. I'm never really prepared to be confident because I know that there's smarter people than me in the room, right? So I don't want to say something that's incorrect or something like that. So sometimes I get myself worked up and I lack that confidence as well, but I just kind of tuck that away and hide it and just kind of take the leap. You get used to it after a while.
Yep, for sure. And then Elise had a question, what are some of the most difficult and unexpected problems that pop up during these projects? And that is a full gamut of many things. So I guess I'll say one of the things, that's challenging is you're trying to make a lot of people happy with your project. So the chemical engineer will come up with an idea, and, we mechanicals and electricals have to go figure out a solution. But then at the same time, you have to make sure that it's done in a safe way. So you've got to make the safety department happy. You've got to get environmental to buy in. And, if you don't do that in a timely manner, they can look at your project and say, well, wait, you can't do that for this reason or that reason. So, getting buy-in from those other groups, but also then you've got operations. And if you don't put the valves the way that they want them or where they want them, or if you're not thinking about their perspective and how they have to operate something, and maybe it's just not going to work for them, or maintenance, they can't get to an instrument to maintain it. Our transmitters have to be, looked at and PM'd over time. And so there's just, I guess, long story short is there's a lot of departments that have to be satisfied when, we're doing projects. I would say that's, you get thrown for a loop sometimes if you don't talk to the right people at the right time.
I think to piggyback off of Allison's comment, one of the most difficult things I've seen is people don't remember the conversations you've had or being part of these discussions and scope development. So they can sometimes change their mind because something else comes up that they think may be better. So I think taking a lot of good notes and after meetings, sending out emails to recap what you discussed and who has action items and responsibilities to take away from that meeting is a really good tool to use, because you have everybody on the distribution, or you have signatures, or you have it in writing. Email is your friend as long as you save everything. So I feel like that has been one of the bigger challenges in the beginning of my career, and I learned how.
Yeah, I think getting used to the idea that every project is going to be a compromise is very important. Um, and once you kind of roll with that and get all of those parties on board with that same idea, it really helps your project come to a good conclusion and be successful.
The next one I see up here, do you have any advice for in battling imposter syndrome? That's a good question. So, I think what happens organically, as you move through your career is, you start gaining, you gain a lot of confidence in the projects that you do. So you kind of move along and you're given, your supervisor will give you what you can handle. And, you'll bite it off a little bit at a time. You'll get that confidence. I don't know that I've been in a situation where I think my confidence has been challenged, but I think that, you start to hone those skills over time. And I don't know that I've ever felt that, my confidence had been shaken that much that, I wasn't this isn't the right job for me, or why did I choose this, this career? I don't think, this wasn't meant for me or something like that. I think that's the great thing about engineering is that there's so many different things you can do with it. And even within this plant alone, there's so many, what we try to do is recognize people's skills and talents and put them, where they're going to thrive. And, the company is really great about doing that. And so I guess that's why I would say I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I kind of looked at myself and said, man, I'm just not up. I'm not up for this engineering thing. Like I can't do it. You're kind of given those challenges along the way, and your confidence gets boosted with every project that you do and every situation that you have to deal with. So I guess that's what I would say to that one. I hope that helped with that one. The next one was, how do you manage your time and balance your work, home life, and engineering? So that's a really good question. So, I guess one thing I'll say is like my husband and I both work full time, and we've got the 3 kids, and but we both recognize that our personal life is really important. I've shifted my hours up, so my husband handles the children in the morning, and I do my best to leave as close to 3:30 as possible so I can get home, pick up the kids, and have my evenings with my children. So we kind of work out that schedule and that routine. But even without kids, I would just say, it shouldn't be normal for people to have to work, 50, 60 hours a week. I mean, there's going to be situations where, the engineers or myself have to stay late for something, there's a problem, but in general, we try really hard to encourage everybody to, to promote that work-life balance. And I think it's getting a lot better, than it was. I mean, even for me, I've been here for 14 years, so I've seen it get better. But I think as, some of this older generation, the mindset was always, if you're not working 60, 70 hours a week, then, you're not the best engineer out there type of deal. And now it's, you can be efficient and you can get your stuff done in 40 hours and, you're happier. People realize that you're happier if you have, that work-life balance. I mean, I know me as a supervisor, I don't want to see my engineers here until 5 o'clock every night, working all these extra hours a week because you get burnout and, it's better for people to stay fresh. So, I think the industry is helping with that, but I also think, you kind of have your schedule and you stick to it and, you make sure you take time for yourself. Although female engineering role models are scarce, have there been any female role models or mentors that have been influential to you in your personal career path? Yeah, I mean, I definitely have had, I've definitely had, a supervisor in the past who was a female, and now she's, moved up into the company, and I definitely look to her on occasion. That's why the networking thing is so important, because you're going to come across, people in your career and holding on, and, it's a 16 refinery system marathon. So, people move around a lot, not a heck of a lot, but, to an extent, but you hold on to those connections and, those people that, maybe the example that I gave, she's moved up, she's a manager at another refinery, and I talked to her on occasion, and, just talking to her and with her, I've kind of realized that isn't really the path I want to go. So while she's influential to me as a leader, it also helps you realize maybe what you want to do, and it might not be exactly what your role model is doing, but, that person's there to help, kind of talk you through it and give examples of what they've seen. And I mean, it's huge. It's extremely important to be able to have those connections in your work life, and in college as well. I mean, so that's, kind of my perspective there.
To touch on that, Allison was actually my supervisor when she was the E&I supervisor, and then she moved to mechanical, but I still knew that I could go to her office at any time and talk to her about my career path, because like I said, I just got married and I do want to, pursue children at some point. So I feel like I look to Allison for those things to make sure that I understand, what job roles I can take on while trying to start a family. So, and when I first started, I had a couple people down in the engineering department, and actually one of them was a male that was my mentor, and I still talk to those people all the time, and I see myself as a mentor to a young engineer we have now. She comes in my office all the time and asks, hey, is this an appropriate reaction? Or, hey, how would you handle this in a meeting if this were you? Would you talk to your supervisor about this? Because as a female, you fear coming off as emotional, right? So I've seen mentors, and I feel like I'm becoming one from having good mentors. So.
And it looks like we got one more question. What has been your favorite project at Marathon? Maybe I'll throw that over to Chelsea or Grace, and Shell are a little bit closer to doing projects than I am.
I'll do a quick example. So I got put on an electronic badging system for one of our units. So essentially all of our units have this paper log where you sign in, and you write what time you got there and all. And essentially one of our most dangerous units is the HF Alky unit. It has extra PPE required and stuff like that. So safety wanted a tighter grip on the way that they recorded who was in the unit. And it's helpful, if something happens, all of this data is electronic. So if something happens in the unit and you can't go back for the book or something, operators respond appropriately, right? They have extra PPE and things. So, but having this data electronically was a huge step in the right direction. So that was definitely a difficult project because I'm used to, electrical and instrumentation throughout the field. So it was a huge challenge. And after startup, there was quite a few hiccups because we had to migrate it with our badging system that we use to get into the refinery. And there was a lot of cybersecurity things going on there. So I not only learned a lot, but every time I go in the unit, I see that. I feel like that's one of my biggest successes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely projects that, like the one Chelsea gave, where, it kind of has our name on it, right? So you led a project, and, to this day, I might have done a project 10 years ago, and those people out in the field will remember me when they look at it, right? So there's that aspect. There's that, you were successful, you made your stamp on the plant, type of thing. But also the fun ones are, also the ones I feel like are the ones where you had to work with a bunch of other people, right? Where you had to bring a whole group together. Everybody was willing to help you. It was a big team effort. And so for me, that as opposed to, something that I might have been able to just kind of handle mostly on my own, I think it kind of gives you more energy and excitement when you have to do it with a bunch of other people. So yeah, I think it doesn't look like we have any more questions at this point. Appreciate y'all today. That was really fun. I did mail over some swag, marathon swag, so I don't know how that all gets distributed, but it's somewhere over there. So be on the lookout, I suppose. Thank y'all so much.